The average person is said to spend 15 minutes in the bathroom. Why not take advantage of that time and learn something new? Presenting the 15-minute podcast on weird facts, crazy details, and funny particulars that you'll be able to enjoy while you're taking on your free time. Welcome to The Shit with Sam Butler. Welcome to another episode of The Shit Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Butler. I'm real happy to be back doing the podcast. I know that you can tell I'm still out of town. I'm not at the studio. I'm actually working at Lake Placid, New York. If you haven't watched some of the other episodes, you would know that. But I am here in New York, and I'm doing this in my hotel room. So please bear with me. I'm trying my best to get you guys a podcast every single week. With that being said, I'm real happy. I want to thank you guys for following the podcast. Please, if you haven't done so, like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. Leave your comments on YouTube. I read them all, and I try to respond to every single one of you guys. I recently hit 16.3K subscribers, so thank you guys for subscribing. I can't thank you enough. Your subscription means a lot to me. I'm able to use the monetization that I get from YouTube to help pay the production of these videos. With that being said, I know that I could probably produce them myself. I'm just very, very incapable with technology, certain types of technology. You know, I graduated in 1994. My last year in high school is when Windows 93 came out. And I remember clicking a window and then clicking a window and clicking a window and clicking a window. Didn't understand what that was. And I had like 100 windows, 100 tiles. And now I kind of understand. But producing this podcast does take people who are better at this than me. With that being said, your likes, your comments, your watching the videos really helps me. So thank you guys once more. Also, I want to take this opportunity to let you all know that I will be headlining Club 139 in Mexico City. That's one of the top clubs in Mexico City. I'm super excited to be there. It's an honor for me to do it. I'll be doing it in Spanish. I have some friends from Mexico City joining me with their sets, or they'll be performing with me. And I also have some friends from one friend from El Paso and one from Las Vegas. And it's going to be a pretty international show. So if you have a chance and you happen to be in the Mexico City area, or if you have family in the Mexico City area, please let them know. Have them come out. I'm going to be at Club 139 August 26th. That's a Friday, August 26th at 10:30 p.m. I'd like to see you guys there. Come say hello. We'll take photos. We'll do all kinds of stuff. It'll be wonderful. I'm super excited. With that, I want to get into this episode. I already did the episode in Spanish, and the reason that I do it in Spanish and then do it in English is in case you want to learn either Spanish or English. You can watch both episodes and kind of pick up on what's being said. Since you've seen it in one language, you can see it in the other language. And I want to thank all the people in Mexico and South America that use my podcast as a teaching tool for the English as a second language programs. So thank you guys very much. I'm very happy. And with that, I'll get started on this episode of the Shit Podcast. As many of you guys know, I'm actually in Lake Placid, New York, doing construction work because that is my other job. I've been doing construction most of my life. I started when I was 12 years old. I really didn't work hard when I was 12. I was more of a, the boss's son. But I grew up on job sites. I grew up picking up trash. I grew up going to the dump, getting rid of waste. And so that turned into a career. I eventually went to school, became a welder. I went to welding school for 3 years. I know that's a lot, but it was through a high school program. I got certified as a welder. I've been working in the industry now for close to 30 years. In 2025, it'll be 30 years working as a welder or having something to do with metal trades. Now, I think I'm pretty good, and I've learned a lot about steel, and I've done a lot of different projects through my life. And you do all these things, and you think you know something, and then you come across an article like I did that just blows your mind. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about magic mirrors. Yeah, some people will call them magic mirrors or translucent mirrors or light penetrating mirrors. Now, we're pretty familiar with the modern mirror that you can kind of see. It's a two-way mirror. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm actually talking about mirrors that were developed in China somewhere around the year 200 BC, before Christ. So 200 years before Christ was on the earth, and to put that into perspective, the United States is a little bit over 200 years old. So 200 years before Christ, the Han Dynasty was developing these mirrors. Now, they were 100% bronze. They were made out of metal. They weren't made out of glass. They were made out of metal. Now, what's interesting is, in the way this article came about that caught my attention and just blew my mind, is that the Cincinnati Museum of Art, which has something like 100,000 different articles of exhibition or different artifacts, I guess is the right term, in their Asian collection, happen to have a mirror that to the average person just seemed like a plain old mirror, like nothing's going on. It's a metal mirror. That's pretty cool. But it wasn't until recently that they've discovered something very interesting. Now, I don't want to get the name wrong. It's Humei Sung. Humei Sung is an expert in. She happens to be an expert in Asian artifacts. I'm assuming she's Asian by her name, but she had this interest in these ancient Chinese mirrors. Now, I say Chinese, but they've been seen in Japanese culture, they've been seen in Korean culture, but the thought process is that they actually developed in China and eventually spread out. And what it is about this mirror that makes it so impressive is that to the average person, it looks like a plain, basic mirror. Now, Hu Mei Sung was on a conference call with a curator of the museum in Cincinnati, and had discovered that they had this mirror, was kind of suspicious about the origin of the mirror, so she had the curator from the Cincinnati Museum of Art actually go into their basement where they had thousands of artifacts that were just sitting there, find the mirror, and shine a light on it. What they discovered when they shined the light on this mirror is that the reflection would actually reflect an image onto a wall or a screen or any blank surface. Now, this is why they call them magic mirrors, because to the naked eye, it looks like a plain mirror. But when light hits it, it reflects an image. Now, it's very interesting to see how this goes down, because on the surface, there is no image. So how do they do this, or how is it done? Well, I read the article. This article was pretty awesome, and it talked about the actual museum in Cincinnati. And then I had to do some further research, and I found out that it hasn't been that long that we've discovered these. Right around the 19th, 20th century is when we started to discover these. Archaeologists started discovering these mirrors, started realizing that there was something in the mirror that wasn't obvious. And it's exactly that. Shine a light on them and they reflect a different image. Now, most of these mirrors, if not all of these mirrors, are Buddhist themed. So this was something that a noble family would have in their home, or a temple would have, and I'm assuming that they would place it somewhere where the daylight or the sunlight would hit it at a certain point, and then you could see a reflective image. What did they find in this mirror in the museum in Cincinnati? Well, they found that when they shined the light, there was actually an image of Buddha, and it seemed like sun rays or light rays were emanating from this image of Buddha, and it's assumed that this is like a celestial image of him in the clouds. And then there was some writing on the back side of the mirror as well, which also appeared on the wall, which is interesting because this is all metal. It's all made out of metal. So they didn't understand exactly how this is done. There's a lot of different theories as to how this goes down. One of the theories is that they would actually etch the image onto the mirror, either by hand or I don't know that it would be like an acid etching, but there was an etching on the mirror. Then they'd polish it, and they'd polish it so much that to the naked eye it would look polished, but the variations in the etching from the smooth surface would create those shadows within the mirror when it was reflected. That's one theory. Some people believe that. I don't know that that's necessarily what I believe. The second theory, and this is the one that is like the most plausible to me, is that they're actually taking bronze and they're molding it. They're casting it into a mold, and which is pretty interesting in itself. If you've ever seen them do any kind of a mold with metal, I'm assuming it'd be like a sand mold. And like I said, this is something I'm assuming. I don't know for sure. But what normally people do with aluminum and so on and so forth is that they'll actually take some sand, they'll pack it down, and they'll create an image in the sand, which is generally a negative image of what you want on your mold, and then they would cast this piece right into the sand, and then once it's dry, they're pouring the molten metal in there. Once it's dry, they peel the sand away, and it leaves the impression that you made in the sand on the metal. Now, these pieces are cast, but there's some pieces that actually have a thin piece of sheet metal that's been soldered on over the top of them, which makes this even more baffling, because it's usually the image that's on the reverse side of the mirror that shines through when the light hits it. So it's almost like you're making metal transparent, and that's why it's magical, because you're able to see through the metal, which is incredible. Now, they also have discovered that they'll do like a coating of some sort of mercury over top of the mirror when they give it its shine. And when they polish the mirror, a lot of times it'll end up concave, or I guess it's the opposite of concave. It'll end up like a dome. So the mirror has a dome aspect to the finish side, and then it has a very solid aspect to the back side of it. Now, the second theory, like I was saying, is that when they actually take this mirror and they polish it, it's the variations in thickness of the steel from polishing it. Well, it's not steel, from the bronze, from polishing it, that actually creates those shadows in the image that is being shown onto the flat surface. And this is something that I have a tendency more to believe, because if you take a piece of metal and there's a weld behind it, and where it was burnt in there, for example, and you grind the front side of it, sometimes the penetration of the heat will shine through that outer layer. So in my mind, I think that's what's happening. I don't know for sure. It's something that's baffled researchers, although there's a lot of theories. Now, these mirrors are very rare. They found them, but there's only a handful of museums around the world that actually have these mirrors on display. One is the Met in New York City. Another one's a Museum of Art in Tokyo, Japan. And like I said, a lot of them are Buddha-based or Buddhist-based. Maybe I think I read that there's some Shinto in there, but they're mostly like religious icons. So if you ever go to the Museum of Art in Cincinnati, which I think next week, the 23rd of July, is when it goes back on exhibit. So if you happen to be in the area, the Cincinnati Museum of Art will actually have this mirror on display. There's a picture of it in one of the articles that I read. It's pretty awesome. It's the shit. How do you make steel translucent? That is what boggles my mind, and that's something I wanted to share with you guys on this episode of the Ship Podcast. I wanted, like I said, the purpose of this podcast is to talk about stuff that might not be just common knowledge. With that being said, check it out, research it. Magic mirrors. You can Google it as magic Chinese mirrors, and you'll have a ton of information on it. I was fascinated by it. I wanted to share with you guys, and I thank you guys for joining me on this episode. That wraps us up on this episode of the Ship Podcast. We'll catch you again next week. Thank you guys, and have a good week.